It's hard to know what you want to do. I know, at 18.
There's something really nice when you start out with Roger, just with
Oh, I knew David. Yes, sir.
Almost good afternoon, everyone. If you take your seats, please, we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Dallas Country Club and to Compassionate DFW's Mayor's Luncheon. Just imagine the culminating event for our Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex Cities campaign, which has started in May of this year. I want to thank you for coming. I'm Charlie Barker, and I'll be the MC for the luncheon today. On behalf of Compassionate DFW Leadership Steering Committee, Jack Ernest, Deanna Hollis, Bill Maxwell, Will Smith, Jack Duncan, Conley Barker, and myself, we would like to extend a special welcome to the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex mayors and Mayor Pro Tems present here today. Mesquite's Mayor Pro Tem Forsyth, McKinney's Mayor Longmiller, Richardson's Mayor Masca, and Mayor Pro Tem Townsend, glad you could be here. Carrollton's Mayor Marshall, Frisco's Mayor Masso, Compassionate Fort Worth's Mayor Price, DeSoto's Mayor Sherman, Waxahachie's Mayor Strength, and Rockwell's Mayor Sweet and Mayor Pro Tem Pruitt. Welcome. And a special welcome to Fort Worth Councilwoman Gina. Is she here? Okay, maybe she'll be here. Thank you again for being here. We extend a very special welcome to Mayor Fisher of Compassionate Louisville, Kentucky. He agreed back in May of this year to Skype into the November luncheon. But as the luncheon neared, and he made plans to attend the Compassion Conference this week in San Francisco, he sent word that he'd rather drop in than Skype. So we're glad he dropped in. So. We're really looking forward to your words of experience with the Charter of Compassion in Louisville, what I would consider the model city at this point in that movement. I'm sure there are a number of questions our Dallas-Fort Worth area officials will have regarding the practical application of the Charter for Compassion from the city government perspective. So I'm sure we can expect some of those questions today. Finally, a very special welcome to our guest speaker, Mr. Andrew Himes, who is director of the Charter of Compassion International, based in Seattle, Washington. Mr. Himes will share with us insights and experiences with the International Compassion Cities campaign, and will then invite Mayor Fisher to the podium for his remarks concerning Louisville. As you can see from slide 2, we faced a number of problems. The list is long. These are just a few. Local, statewide, national, as well as international issues. And again, these are only a few. But just imagine if every city in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex embraced the virtue of compassion and the Golden Rule by affirming the International Charter for Compassion by resolution, giving each community a clear and luminous statement of compassion, and by cultivating compassion and compassionate behavior in every aspect of city and metroplex community life. That's what we're going to be talking about today. But first, let's go with lunch, okay? I'd like to call on Reverend Tom Gibbons of St. Barnabas Presbyterian Church, Richardson, Texas, to give our invocation and blessing of the food, after which please proceed with lunch and some conversation. We'll begin our program in about 10 or 15 minutes. Reverend Gibbons.
Join me. Loving God, you are the power by which we live and move and have our being. You are the power by which we understand the profound human nature of compassion. We are grateful that we are able to walk in that light. And we simply ask that we may recall that we do not only move by our own power, but by yours. Bless the fellowship that we have. Bless the food that we have before us. For we ask this in your holy name.
TED Talk is to make a wish. Armstrong's wish at the end of her 20-minute talk, was that the three monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, would draft a charter for compassion, a charter that would promote compassion as the ideal relationship with the golden rule as the key operating principle of behavior. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. With Ted Price's help, the Charter of Compassion was completed in the fall of 2009. Leaders from all the world's religions, not just the monotheistic religions, along with other non-religious leaders, affirmed the Charter. To date, over 100,000 individuals and numerous organizations of all types around the world have affirmed the Charter of Compassion, supported by the International Compassion Action Network organization based in Seattle, Washington. At this time, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Mr. Andrew Hines, Director of the Charter of Compassion International out of Seattle. I first met Andrew in Louisville, Kentucky in May of 2013 at a Festival of Faith conference and the first annual Compassion Organizations International Workshop, both of which were parts of a Louisville, Kentucky venue in which the Dalai Lama attended and spoke to thousands of individuals. Andrew and I became fast friends. Interestingly, I found out that Andrew has deep family roots here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Andrew can tell you more about himself when he comes up to the podium, but I'd like to show the video, The Charter of Compassion, as part of my introduction of Andrew. The Charter is the centerpiece for the International Cities Campaign, recently named Communities Campaign. The Charter has been a major part of Andrew's life and work over the past several years. Ladies and gentlemen, the International Charter of Compassion.
The principle of compassion lies at the heart of all religious, ethical, and spiritual traditions.
Calling us always to treat all others as we wish to be treated ourselves.
Compassion compels us to work tirelessly to alleviate the suffering of our fellow creatures.
To discern ourselves from the center of our world and put an order.
To honor the inviolable sanctity of every single human being.
Treating everybody without exception.
With absolute justice, equity, and respect.
It is also necessary in both public and private life.
To refrain consistently and empathically from inflicting pain.
To act or speak violently out of spite, chauvinism, or self-interest.
To impoverish, exploit, or deny basic rights to anybody.
And to incite hatred by denigrating others, even our enemies.
Is a denial of our common humanity.
We acknowledge that we have failed to live compassionately.
And that some have even increased the sum of human misery in the name of religion.
We therefore call upon all men and women
To restore compassion.
to the center of morality and religion,
To return to the ancient principle
That any interpretation of Scripture
that breeds violence,
hatred
or disdain
is illegitimate.
To ensure that you are given accurate and respectful information.
About other traditions, religions, and cultures.
To encourage a positive appreciation of cultural and religious diversity.
to cultivate
An informed empathy with the suffering of all human beings,
even those
regarded as enemies.
We urgently need to make compassion a clear, luminous, and dynamic force in our polarized world.
rooted in a principled determination to transcend selfishness.
Compassion can break down political, dogmatic, ideological, and religious boundaries.
Born of our deep interdependence, compassion is essential for human relationships and to a fulfilled humanity.
It is the path to enlightenment and indispensable in the creation of a just economy and a peaceful global community.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Andrew Hines.
Thank you.
I am very grateful to be here. This is my first ever trip to Dallas-Fort Worth in my life, despite the fact that my family does have deep roots in this part of the world. I live in Seattle, but back in the early 1920s, my granddad, John R. Rice, attended Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in Fort Worth. He was the son of a Baptist preacher, and he became a preacher himself, an evangelist. My grandparents had 6 daughters, and every single daughter married a Baptist preacher. So you can imagine that family gatherings in our family were very interesting. All of my male relatives are Baptist preachers. And I think, for me personally, the idea of compassion, the passion for compassion, was implanted in me very, very early in my life. With a song that I've learned in Sunday school. And the song, I'm sure that many of you know the song. It was Jesus loves the little children. Jesus loves the little children of the world, all the children of the world, red and yellow, black and white, all are precious in his sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. And that song, if you think about it, the words imply a radical equality, a deep love and respect, a generosity, and a desire to support fully every single child in the world, no matter what that child looks like or where the child lives or what the child's culture is like. Every single human being is a precious object in the sight of God and in the sight of all of us. I think that's the compassion that's built into our DNA. The most profound question that I've been considering over the last few years of my life has been, what is a compassionate community? A community of compassion. I asked that question of Karen Armstrong in a public conference about a year and a half ago, and she gave me an answer that I've never forgotten and has been something of a touchstone for me during the last couple of years. Karen said, a compassionate city is a city that is profoundly and deeply uncomfortable. That is, uncomfortable if there is a single child who goes to bed hungry at night or isn't given the opportunity to have a great education. If there's anyone who doesn't have access to really wonderful, essential health care. If there's any family that does not have a home to go to, does not have a home to go to in the evening. If there's anybody who's not given the opportunity, or any group of people who are not given the opportunity to flourish and thrive, and given the respect and generosity and support that's due every single human being. And of course, we live in a global community. It's not just about what happens here in Dallas or what happens in Fort Worth or in Seattle, but every single community is part of an interconnected global community. I've been especially profoundly inspired by the stories that I've heard from around the world, hundreds of cities where there are meetings like this taking place, and civic leaders and community leaders and people from neighborhoods of very, very diverse places and diverse cities are coming together to ask this critical question: what are we uncomfortable about in our community? What is it we decide that we must address in order to create a truly community of compassion in which our deepest values are aligned with our behavior in the world and the aspirations that we have for our children and ourselves, for the kind of world that we want to live in. Just yesterday morning, I was on the phone with a man named Amin Hashwani, who's a Pakistani businessman. He lives in Karachi. I was in Karachi in January of this year. As you all know, Karachi is a very troubled city. 22 million people, vast problems in some ways. And I spoke at a conference on the future of cities in South Asia. During that week, we heard about problems of overcrowding, how millions of people didn't have access to clean drinking water, problems with the healthcare system, the political system, political infighting, religious sectarianism, and on and on. But at the very end of the week, we all came to this common conclusion. Culture is the story we tell ourselves about who we are. And there's an alternative story. And this story is equally true and even more important as one to focus on. Every single one of the 22 million people who live in Karachi, Pakistan, were born with the DNA of compassion in their blood and their bones. More than half of the people who live in Karachi are under the age of 17. And that is a country and a city that is recreating itself on a daily basis. The aspiration in Karachi is to create a community of compassion. Amina Schwein told me yesterday morning that within the last month, they sent out a call for citizens of Karachi to express what is it that you would like to, what's the city that you want to live in? What is it like? Who lives next to you? What do they look like? How do the institutions and the practices and the culture of Karachi look like if Karachi is to be a compassionate city? In the last month, they've had over 25,000 people in Karachi come to a website and express specific ideas for how to improve life in Karachi to create a more compassionate community. They expect that by the time this campaign is done, in the next 2 months, they'll have over 150,000 people on that website expressing specific ideas to improve life in Karachi. And then they intend to create a petition to take to the leaders of the city in 12 different sectors. They plan to have over 1 million people sign that petition and then be engaged in the process of creating a compassionate city. Over 300 schools in that city are now engaged in that movement, and thousands of students in all of those schools are engaged in it. It's amazing to me to think that Karachi, Pakistan could be a tremendous model for the kind of transformational effort and the movement toward compassion that all of us can learn from. And I expect that we'll find the same thing is true in Dallas and Fort Worth and a dozen other cities in this area of the country, as well as thousands upon thousands of cities around the world, where this idea of compassion is a clarion call, a beacon, a shining star in the firmament of every city and every brain in that city. One of the most extraordinary cities in America, from my perspective, is Louisville, Kentucky. One of the first cities in the country, to sign the Charter for Compassion and then declare itself as being on the path to becoming a city of compassion. I just want to point out that the most important thing that we can notice is that the idea of a compassionate city is not a certificate program. It's not a piece of paper that you get assigning you the status or the reputation as a city of compassion, and you hang it on the wall and feel good about yourself and move on with life. Rather, as Mayor Greg Fisher has demonstrated in Louisville, along with a very large number, thousands of people across that city, in communities, in neighborhoods, and in institutions, that the important thing about the idea of a compassionate city is the tension between our deepest values and the world that we want to live in. So I'll introduce Greg in that way by we're going to be showing a little video here talking about Louisville and what's been happening there, and then we'll be graced with his honor, Greg Fisher.
Compassion is the world's most abundant, most powerful, and most underutilized natural resource. The Charter for Compassion International is working to change that by starting a global movement utilizing compassion as a unifying force in our polarized world. Studies by Dr. James Doty at the Stanford Center for Compassion and Altruism show that compassion improves productivity, innovation, and happiness. On November 11, 2011, Louisville, Kentucky, in conjunction with Mayor Greg Fisher, declared itself a city and committed to a 10-year campaign to nurture the growth of compassion in the community. Every day, Louisville is becoming an even bigger player in the global compassion movement. By September 2015, the charter's goal is to have 100 cities, and within those 100 cities, 100 organizations, 100 schools, and 100 businesses, as well as to attract celebrities and world leaders to come together to inspire individuals to make civic engagement an integral part of their lives. We need your help to make this happen. Compassion can enhance economic development in Louisville, as well as solidify us as one of the leading forces in the quest for a better world. Act now for compassion. Adopt a resolution, sign the Charter for Compassion, and help us answer the question, what does compassion want for Louisville?
That's the question. Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Greg Fisher. It's great to be with you all here today. I'm delighted, Charlie, I was able to stop in on the way to San Francisco. There's an International Empathy and Compassion Conference that I'm speaking to tomorrow. I don't want you to think I just fly around the world talking about compassion all day, but that would be a good thing to do. I'm a business person, and it just happens to be mayor right now. So I think it's giving me a little different platform to talk about compassion in our city. I think any great company has got compassion at its core, and I'll talk about that here in a second. When I was elected mayor, and I'm coming to the end of my first term, I was thinking about my inaugural speech, and to me that was like, okay, now this is for real. What are we going to be doing with the city? And coming from the private sector, I've always felt like any organization should have some defined values that are the lens through which all the important decisions of that company, that nonprofit, are made. And running a city is not that much different from running a company. There's a little difference. I say to be a good mayor, you have to have the head of the chief executive officer, but you have to have the heart of the social worker. Because unlike a company, a city, you don't get to choose who your customers are, who your suppliers are. Everybody's on the team. And in a city the size of Louisville, we're about 770,000 people or so. That's a lot of different people. And some that maybe which weren't on the team, but they are on the team. So how do we reach out to everybody? So the three overarching goals that I've defined for the city were, number one, we will be a city of lifelong learning. Any interesting city that you go to, the people are always learning new things and create opportunity, entrepreneurs, and jobs. The second would be, we're going to be a healthy city. And by health, I mean not just physical health, but mental health, environmental health, and spiritual health. And the third was, we're going to be an even more compassionate city. And it was that third goal that really surprised people. They're thinking, who's this guy, this politician, talking about compassion? You know, at first I'd say, please don't call me a politician. I'm a public servant, I'm an elected official. You know, to be called a politician these days is not really that much of a compliment. And then people would say, well, look, you're talking about compassion, it makes you sound weak. I said, well, that's not my experience. It's much more difficult for most people to be compassionate than it is to be cynical or skeptical or be a critic from the couch. So I would hope we'd have a city where everybody is learning all the time, healthy in all aspects, and compassionate just as part of what we do day in and day out. Imagine a city like that. That would be a wonderful place to live. So off we go on that journey. Louisville's got a strong tradition of hospitality, just like you all do here in the South. A strong tradition of interfaith relations. Our Festival of Faith is entering its 20th year this year. Thomas Merton, who was a monk from the Abbey of Gethsemane, was based right outside of Louisville. And his epiphany that he had in the downtown area influenced a lot of thinking in our city. I've always thought it was funny that a Baptist monk would have an epiphany on 4th and Walnut Street in Louisville, but you got to have it somewhere, so why not in the middle of our downtown? But his awakening and his writing about it has influenced us a great deal. So here's a guy, 1958, looking over the hustling and bustling shopping district of the city, and he was thinking about the great mysteries of life. That's what you do as a monk, amongst other things. And he was going through a period of frustration of trying to figure out what does this all mean. So it struck him on 1958 when he had this epiphany where he said, I was looking out amongst all of the people in the city, and it was as if the sun was shining on each and every one of their faces. The sun was shining on their faces. There were thousands of people with this beam of sun coming down on them. And he said, if only everybody could see each other that way, there would be no more war, there would be no more sorrow, there would be no more hatred. And so from that then built this great notion of interdependence that we all have on each other. And we kind of understand that from an intellectual level, but the question is, how do you bring interdependence alive in a city, in a state, in a country? Where we look at somebody who comes from very different places from us but say, my future depends on you. We are connected that way. And this is one of the gateways that's really critical for us to become a more compassionate city, a more compassionate country, where we really understand where we are connected. It doesn't matter if you're from the east side of town, the south side of town, the north side of town, black, white, brown, whatever you speak. We go to school together, we work together, whether we like it or not, we are in this thing together. So let's make the most out of it. We've had a lot of success in this way in terms of bringing the city together and external recognition, although that is not why you do this type of thing. Louisville has been called a hotbed of compassion. We were the first large city in the country to sign the Charter for Compassion with the Metro Council resolution that passed unanimously, and we signed it on November 11th of 2011, just 3 years ago. And this was a really critical step in the journey, and one I'd like for you all to think about here today, because it's a public declaration of intention. Don't get all caught up in it. Got to have this specific plan of 100 steps. You just need some directional goals. I've always found in life, if you have some noble goals, you put them out there, you move toward them, you might end up in a different place, but good things happen along the way. And there's certainly no bad way to build a more compassionate city. One of the methods that came out of that organization was something we call a Partnership for Compassionate Louisville. So this pulls together schools, nonprofits, faith-based institutions, food banks, women's shelters, you name it. Private sector companies are part of our partnership, where we work together to jointly promote issues around compassion. Spalding University is in Louisville, the first college in the country to become signatory to the charter. And then, of course, we were named an International Model City of Compassion as well. These are good things, because even if you're not there, and you're never going to be there, by the way, the more you create the expectation in your city, the more people will strive to move toward that place. So I accept the recognition and we welcome it, because it then just makes the pie grow even more. The simplest entry into building a more compassionate city is just to expand what your cities do around service work. Most everybody understands the notion of public service, although a lot of people haven't done public service, surprisingly, service work. So we created a program called the Give a Day, Week of Service. It's something we did a Give a Day one day right after I was inaugurated, and I dedicated it to my mother. I grew up in a great family. My mom's main value was, if you can help somebody, help somebody. Don't ask what's in it for you, just do it. And my dad's main value was, everybody's the same. Doesn't matter if it's the President of the United States, Sam the Shoe Shine Man, everybody's equal on the face of the earth. So coming out of that is a real natural way for us to extend this value into the city. We created something called Give a Day. It's Give a Day week, and we started it before the Kentucky Derby Festival. We had a 2-week festival for a 2-minute horse race. We're also creating a 52-week-a-year travel experience, Betsy, around bourbonism. You also know that 95% of the world's bourbon comes from Kentucky. The other 5% is counterfeit. There's been a great synergy between bourbonism and our local food movement and service work that all comes together and brings people to the table. And this is when things happen. So during our Give a Day week, we call on everybody in the city to come out and do service for the city. Last year, we had 144,000 volunteers and acts of compassion during that week. So what we built this to is, when you're about a month away, people are saying, what do you do for the Give Day Week of Service? UMan is asking Brown Forum, but companies are involved, churches are involved, mosques are involved, so that there's an expectation that, hey, you need to be doing something. And if you're not doing it, do you want to join our effort as well? And then we had about 40,000 of our school kids involved as well. So we're really growing nicely in that area. And as I go to different events, I'll frequently ask people, do you do much service work? It's not unusual for people to say, this is the first time I've ever done this, and I love it. I said, well, why haven't you done it before? And they say, I didn't know how to do it. You made it easy for me. And you go to a website, United Way does the back office for it. You can say, I know I'm available Tuesday between 3 and 6. What's going on? There's a dozen projects that come up. Or you can, if you're a nonprofit, you put your own project on there at the same time. So working with your local United Way is also something I've asked for you to consider. And if you need some help with that, just contact us. They've got the software that matches projects and service projects and volunteers. You probably have that already. Now this year, I said after we're done with this, each year after the Give Day Week of Service, I issue a proclamation. And I got to tell you, the first 3 months or so of being mayor, I was very uncomfortable issuing proclamations. Because I'm thinking, like, who am I to issue a proclamation? But anytime you issue a proclamation for the mayors in the room, like, people go with it no matter what you say, it seems like. So it gets to be kind of fun after a while. So I proclaimed that we were the most compassionate city on the face of the earth. And everybody said, yeah, that's right, that sounds good. The U.S. Conference of Mayors named us the most livable city in America because of this proclamation and all the action. Right? So it's really had a virtuous effect to it. But we've established a new goal for volunteers. And the goal is to have 750,000 citizens in our Give Day Week of Service. People are like, 750,000? How are we going to do that? Well, we have 750,000 citizens. So can't everybody stop during the week to help somebody? Isn't this what we're supposed to do anyway? So is it really that revolutionary of a thought for us to do that? Now, part of the shift, I think, that's been helpful for us with compassion is to move it beyond what I call the gateway understanding of compassion. So the gateway is empathy, removal of suffering, the type of things you've seen like this. But you're only going to touch a certain amount of people when you define compassion that way, because it's too churchy, too kind of preachy. And so there's a certain degree of people that are not going to like that. So what we look at compassion as is it's a platform for giving all citizens a firm footing, a solid foundation for success in their life. So compassion to us is creating a platform so people's human potential can flourish. I respect you enough that I want your human potential to flourish. And so imagine then living in a city where all of your citizens are flourishing in all aspects. That's a really exciting place. So it's become a much more proactive, non-judgmental approach to compassion. And some people use compassion, that word is kind of, well, I'm superior to you are, so I have compassion towards you. We want to remove that, and that's where this concept of optimizing potential is all about. And that's what I've always used in my private sector life with our businesses as well. So think about that. Then this allows you to kind of start crossing over into the business world as well, because you need active business participation, I believe, to really energize your city around a notion like compassion. We put a lot of emphasis on our work with kids, especially mentoring. We agree with Frederick Douglass's concept that it's easier to grow kids than it is to fix broken adults. So we've launched all types of community initiatives around that, from expanding community center hours, programming to work with our police department, our public schools. One thing we just launched 6 months ago is a communication link from our police to our public school system, where if you're a student and your family has been involved in some type of altercation, let's say there's been domestic violence in your house, your school is notified of that before school starts, so that if Johnny's coming to school, or Daquan, or whoever it might be, he's had a rough night. and if there's something bad happened in their household, the people in school need to know about that, so that they're not adding to the problem if he seems distracted the next morning, or whatever it might be. So this is just how these projects, how your understanding of compassion grows over the years, at the point of hundreds of things like that we're doing right now. But that's made a real difference in the lives of a bunch of kids here this year. Now, there is a downside to compassion for the mayors in the room. I get comments all the time now, like, I've got a parking ticket. You should have to pay. How is that compassion? So you gotta be ready to talk about the balance between compassion and running a revenue show. A couple final comments. When people think about innovation in cities, and innovation is the coin of the realm, obviously the world's changing very rapidly. Most people think about technology, business in terms of innovation. But in Louisville, I put equal emphasis on what I call social innovation. And that's the cumulative effect of when people come together to do good things. So especially, let's say in this instance, the acts of compassion that come together in our community. You can't measure that. But I would challenge anybody to look on the balance sheet of any company or any city. There's not a balance sheet line item that says compassion or community. But what's the value of having a compassionate community? I would say it's priceless, right? So that notion that it's not valuable or not important, I think we really need to challenge. It's our most important asset. Now, part of that is our roles in this room as I know we have some people here from clergy, but for secular leaders to talk about these notions of compassion, kindness, love, hospitality. Be proud about talking about it. Compassion, people have responded extraordinarily well to in our community. It's about the only thing I can get everybody to agree on. No matter what part of politics you come from or where you come from, if you're a religious person, all the good books have compassion at their core. If you don't have a religious tradition, we're all grown to be people of compassion and help. And I look at them, this emphasis on compassion and other secular ethic is a way to build the social muscles of a city. Why is it important to have social muscle? Well, look no further than the tragedy that took place in Ferguson, Missouri 2 or 3 months ago. What you saw there was a total breakdown between the power structure, so-called power structure of the city, mayor, police department, and its citizens, where they were facing each other off in a militaristic type fashion. Right or wrong, I don't want to put judgment on that, but that's a breakdown in social fabric that can be extraordinarily damaging toward the city. Look what you all went through here last month with this Ebola scare. If that had gone on, that would severely diminish the potential of this region. If you have a crisis in your region, like Ferguson, Missouri, that's a whole different deal when it happens in DFW than it happens in Ferguson, Missouri. Is it important because it's going to diminish the economic potential of your city? That will do that. But if your economic potential is diminished, what that means is that you're reducing opportunities for people to experience their human potential. So building those social muscles is extraordinarily important and requires intentionality to do that. So I'm closing. Think about compassion as citizenship. As a country, we've somehow, I think, in many ways lost our way with citizenship. We've got 3 fundamental responsibilities, I think, as Americans. One is take care of yourself so you can take care of your family. 2 is take care of whomever you're working for so they can flourish so you can flourish. But 3 is contribute to something that's bigger than you. Not expecting anything in return, but helping your community, your state, your country in doing so. That's citizenship. So the acts of compassion, the acts of service is about something bigger than you. And in that vein, it is a tremendous act of citizenship that we practice compassion. And the last thing is, I'll leave you with a quote from the Dalai Lama, because this is fun. If you want others to be happy, be compassionate. And if you want to be happy, be compassionate. So for no other reason, if you just want to be happy, be compassionate. It's not complicated. Okay? All right, thanks everybody.
I know there are some questions. I'd like for Andrew Holmes to come up and join the mayor and myself. Mr. Jack Youngkin, who is one of our leading team members with Compassion DFW Compassion 6 campaign. Jack, I'm going to let you coordinate the question and answer. We have just a little bit of time because we've got another few things we need to do before we join. Jack?
Thanks, Charlie. You're moving the spot to be short, right?
Absolutely. Yes, I noticed.
Well, thank you for coming today. When we started contacting you back in the May-June time frame about this luncheon today, we started talking about compassion and the chart of compassion. A lot of you had questions. Well, gee, aren't we already compassionate? And if I affirm this charter, then what do I do? So I know you have questions, and I'm sure what you've heard today has spurred some additional questions. And I'll tell you one question I've already gotten today is, and this came from the office of the city manager, so you'll understand this question, is does it cost anything? Well, there is no charge to affirm the Charter for Compassion. Once that happens, actually, what happens in your city or your organization is up to you. And if that involves resource or funds or expenses, those are expenses spent on doing compassion. So with that, we'll take a couple of questions, and that maybe we'll be able to entertain. But who has a question? David?
You know, it's kind of obvious that churches would get involved in this, but I haven't thought so much about companies being involved. So it's kind of interesting what you've seen there. How do companies get involved, and what difference does that make?
Well, primarily service projects is the most obvious way to do that. Either working with other companies or taking on a big project in the community. The great thing from that is that it's led to, after the initial encounter, an adoption usually of whomever it is that they're helping. So it could be a Boys and Girls Club, it could be the local school, literacy program, just all types of things around that. So any decent company should have a community-facing part of their mission. So it gives you a great opportunity then to go in and start talking to the companies about that. And most of them will say, well, we do that kind of stuff already. So can we align something, let's say, toward our week of service or our Give a Day week? So then what we're trying to do is build mass movement, right? So take all this energy that might be dissipated, keep that going, but then focus it in 1 week as well so we can really leverage this up to the next level.
Yeah, thank you. I would just add to that, that I and the Charter for Compassion are engaged in a global effort that's just getting off the ground now. It's called the Business Alliance for the Future. And the notion is that a compassionate company is a conscious company. A conscious company is one that is interested not only in shareholder value, producing shareholder value, but in producing stakeholder value. So when you think about all of the stakeholders of the company, including the employees, the owners of the company, the suppliers to the company, the distribution chain, and the broader community, a conscious company thinks about all of the ways in which it has an impact on the world around it, and how to create great value, not just for the company, but in the context of the community. And it turns out, actually, that this is an amazing and wonderful thing. Compassion goes straight to the bottom line of a company. That's not the only reason to do it, but it's an important thing to say that a healthy company making good profits is doing so because it produces real value for a whole set of stakeholders.
I should say, too, that we've had some problems with churches in places of faith that are too insular. You know, so all of a sudden you say, this is a community-wide focus on compassion. I said, well, we already do our own thing. And they're very focused within their four walls. They're not connected to the community. And so this whole notion of interdependence is what we're trying to build with this as well. So if you have adopted other churches across town that are very different from them, there's one way to really bring this to life. But we're trying to get people out and meet people that they don't meet. It's really easy to villainize folks if you know, it's those people on the other side of town. If they weren't fill in the blank, we'd have a good city. Well, I want to bring those folks to the table. And what you find is, gosh, they're just like us. They've got kids. They're trying to provide for themselves. We're both Texas Longhorn fans or whatever, you know, so we rally around that. I like them. You know, so when you can change that notion, you're making real progress, but you got to get out.
Another question. There's got to be at least one more question. All right, Alan?
What role have interfaith organizations, especially those engaged themselves in organizing, played in Louisville and other compassionate cities?
They've been front and center in all of our work. Our Festival of Faiths is entering our 20th year. I believe I mentioned that. So they've been pioneers in this work. So we're not starting from scratch with this. That's why I think it's gone on so well, because it's already part of our city's DNA. I say, look, I didn't create a compassionate city. We just kind of created some platforms for us to scale this further. So they've been very active. It's been really good with some of our Muslim communities, especially our Pakistanis, who have great concern over how they're perceived by Americans right now. And we started having these conversations with them about 5 years ago, and decided then, well, the best way to mainstream acceptance of the faith of Islam is through service work. So our Pakistani community is probably our leaders in terms of per capita public service work, which has been a beautiful thing. So they get great attention from the media, they bring other folks in as well, and then they brought the other international communities along with them at the same time. So all this interfaith work is really an integral part of what we do with Compassion.
I would just add to that there has been a significant shift over the last 20 to 30 years in the interfaith movement itself. At one point, it was mainly about sharing people from different faith traditions, sharing their practices and beliefs and so on. And over the last 10 years especially, and with a lot of insistence from a younger generation, interfaith work is about what can we do together to create a better world. And so in many ways, this whole idea of the compassion movement, or the world of compassion, we're not actually asking anybody to do something remarkably or qualitatively different from what they are already driven to do and want to do in the world. And what all of you are doing in your own communities, it's a matter of saying, well, actually, the work that we want to do and the deepest values that we have are completely connected with this idea of compassion. So I want to be part of it. Many, many times in our city's campaign, an interfaith group takes the first step, and then lots of other people from other sectors and types of organizations jump in and be part of the same group.
So I think just that last thing for me is, so for mayors and other folks in the room from government, think of yourself as conveners, and that's what we do. And so you're just bringing these groups together, like Andrew just mentioned here, and you're just allowing the possibility for something to happen. And by bringing these different folks together around a common mission or a common project, it'll happen by itself. And then what happens after that is those connections continue to go on after that initial project is over, and that's what you want to see happening in your communities. Then it starts taking care of itself. It's got a really great network effect. It's not soft, it's not preachy, it's just people getting to know each other and recognizing our common humanity, which is a good thing for all of our community, and clearly something we need more of, not just here in this country, but all around the world.
All right, well, thank you very much for answering our questions.
And then I'll get to say amen, right? Thank you both, well spoken, well answered, really appreciate, please join me a little bit closer. On behalf of Compassion DFW, we would like to show our deep appreciation to the President, both of you. I think it's very important for Compassion DFW to have you here to express yourself on something that's so vital to all of us, and we hope to see it grow tremendously in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. In our appreciation, we'd like to present to each of you a little token of our appreciation. Mayor Fisher, just a small honorarium, and Andy, you also. In addition, we have started a new tradition here in the compassionate Dallas-Fort Worth area in terms of our organization. We have developed a challenge coin. And so for each city that comes on board as a compassionate city, we're going to present to them a challenge coin, which you see visualized up here. And so we would like to present one in a really nice case here to the Mayor Fisher. And also one for you to. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. God bless, and thank you very much. I hope you will find it satisfying and having a compassionate memorabilia from all over the world. Now I would like to ask Mr. Jack Ernest, a member of Mayor Betsy Price's Interfaith Leadership Cabinet, to escort the mayor to the platform, please. Jack, please remain with us. Okay, in the military manner that I'm used to, here is the following citation. Mayor Betsy Price, you are a visionary and the first of the city mayors in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex area to see the practical value and importance of the Charter for Compassion. This summer, I was amazed as I watched your Chief of Staff, Jason Lammers, and Public Engagement Specialist, Rachel Gordon, work with you in your Interfaith Leadership Cabinet, of which Jack is a member, to draft a resolution affirming the Charter for Compassion. The city's Human Relations Commission added further support, and Fort Worth City Council with strong support from Councilwoman Gina Bivens unanimously affirmed the International Charter of Compassion on the evening of August the 5th. I was there. I witnessed it. It was a beautiful thing. You subsequently set up a working stewardship council of community leaders to begin strategic planning in earnest. You are indeed, as the military leaders say, a quick thing. On behalf of Compassion DFW, I'd like to present to you in the city of Fort Worth our very first Compassionate DFW Challenge coin for becoming the first Dallas-Fort Worth compassionate city, Compassionate Fort Worth. May you in Fort Worth truly pass the torch of compassion throughout the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And here is that coin, special coin for you.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for the honor. Appreciate it, Charles. You know, I think that Mayor Fisher and Andrew said most of it. For us in Fort Worth is a very compassionate city, and we're a rapidly growing city, 17th largest city in the nation. And one of the things that I grew up doing as a former business owner and as a former, still not former mother, but former scout leader, Scout leader, now grandmother, my parents taught us to volunteer and to give back. And that's part of the major piece of being compassionate. And I took that with me to the mayor's office. And I realized in a city as large as we are, it's hard to touch your citizens. It's hard to engage them in city business. It's hard to engage them in a busy community with each other. Right or wrong, children aren't necessarily taught that they need to volunteer, that they need to be compassionate, that they need to think about others. They're often busy, often raised by single-parent families. And one of the first places that we looked is how do we engage our citizens? How do we make a healthier community, a stronger, more vibrant community? Nearly everyone in your community is touched at some level by a faith-based group. They may be actively engaged at church, they may not be. They may be children engaged in a Young Life program. But we pulled together a very diverse faith-based cabinet. Jack is a member of that, Cheryl is, Kimberly from Multicultural Alliance. It runs from the bishops to the imams to the just a wide variety of our Christians. It's a very, very diverse group. Jack covering nearly everyone. But we have to celebrate that diversity, and I think in big cities, part of what you have to do is raise the awareness. Just as Mayor Fisher's done in Louisville, you have to educate people about what they do. And my faith-based cabinet began talking about, particularly, one of our members' daughter was suffering a lot of abuse in school, just verbal comments about. She was a young Jewish girl being made that she found very hurtful. And her father brought it back and said, this is strictly a lack of education among our folks. And I know Fort Worth has a heart for compassion because we truly are the friendliest small town, big, big city. We might give Greg a run for his money on that. But we wanted people to learn to celebrate that. So Faith-Based said, let's talk about this. And when the Compassionate Cities idea came along, Charles, it was a perfect banner for our faith-based group to run with. And we've done a couple of small initiatives, but it really helps define the city. It gives them an opportunity to take it back out, and really people say, what did I do today? You know, most of the kids, you said, I think, Greg, people don't always want that touchy-feely part that religion may bring. But what the kids say is pay it forward. And Compassionate City for this younger generation is all about paying it forward and connecting. We had a litter stop recently. One of my council members, Mrs. Bivens, located an area in bad need. The trees needed trimming. People needed their garbage picked up. They needed the litter picked up. We invited our faith-based group to get involved, and I think 300 people showed up on a Saturday morning to work on it. And that's the first thing we've done. It's very small. But just as importantly, you can pull them together to do spontaneous acts. When the Ebola outbreak hit, my group of compassionate leaders said, let's do a prayer vigil in the park. In 3 days' time, they pulled together a prayer vigil and had a wide variety of people speak. And it was really heartwarming to see people's outpouring of love and to think about what they might do for healthcare workers. But I do think that that's the job of city leaders, and that's the job of each and every one of you in this room, to educate people, to remind them to connect back, because healthy communities are those who are giving back. One of my favorite quotes, Greg Ham, his quote, is from Margaret Mead, and Margaret Mead said, never underestimate the power of a small group of committed individuals to change the world, for indeed it's the only thing that ever has. And that's what Compassionate Cities can do. We can change the world one city at a time. So thank you for your leadership and thank you for your interest.
Finally, Reverend Daniel Cantor of First Unitarian Church of Dallas will share with us a closing Just Imagine challenge. But before he comes up, I want to personally thank a number of individuals who helped plan execution of this event. There's not really time to recognize each and every one of you. There's quite a few individuals. But all I can say is that you know that you can take great pleasure in the fact that today is an expression of love and compassion on your part for all the citizens of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. What a team. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'd also like to thank our major partners, the St. Barnabas Presbyterian Church of Richardson, Texas, and First Unitarian Church of Dallas for their support. Thank you. Our entire Compassionate Dallas-Fort Worth team thanks each of you for coming. And with that, if Reverend Cantor would come up and give us a final challenge, please.
It's a blessing and a curse to go last. So much has been said already. I did want to correct something, Mayor Fisher. There's a lot of good whiskey and bourbon coming out of North Texas. So you may have been floating that down to Mississippi for too much of you. Take it from a clergyman. It's so good to have everyone here. This effort really started in these two churches in different ways. We started studying Karen Armstrong's book, 12 Steps to Compassion, and people started saying, why can't we find other people who are interested in this? And I think you guys are doing something similar. Can all the people from First Unitarian and St. Barnabas just be recognized now by standing. Just let us see you. Thank you. It's not Tom and it's not me that makes this happen. Tom, sit down. It's these people. These are the people that make it happen. And First Unitarian, which is just 300 yards from here, we walked over. My associate and I walked over. I'm still cold. We've been working on these kinds of issues for over 100 years that we've been in Dallas. We were working on integration of schools way back. We've been working on LGBT issues. We've been working on all kinds of issues around child poverty. This year, we are having a whole year on compassion, different aspects. And any faith leaders in the crowd here who want to talk about what that looks like, I'm happy to talk to you about that. So I had a big, long speech prepared, and I realized that so much has been said already. I want to point out one thing that hasn't been pointed out yet. That in the middle of this word compassion is the word passion. Now, compassion means to suffer with, but I look at that word and I see passion, and that tells me that we're here because we can be passionate about the issues in our communities. Every one of our cities that are represented here have issues that need to be addressed. Child poverty, human trafficking, drugs and alcohol. The list goes on and on. And if we don't get passionate about those, we fail our people. So faith communities, which are created and sustained to tune the hearts of their people, are here to meet you, the mayors, whose job it is to protect and sustain human life in our cities, to find the passion to make change for the better, to find the hungry people, to find the people who are oppressed, to find the people whose experience of racism is pressing down upon them, and to bring about conversations and dialogue that help us break down the barriers between us. That's what compassion does. And we have to find the passion in order to do that. Compassion says to me that not that I am no different than you. I am different than you. But in that difference, there is something we share. And that is the human struggle to live our lives with health and wholeness, with freedom and peace. And so as we gather, faith communities and civic leaders, let us ask ourselves, what are we passionate about? And how can we find the passion within the compassion? Now, to my knowledge, no one in this room has received the Nobel Prize, so my quote comes from the Nobel laureate, Aung San Suu Kyi, who was a Buddhist and the civic leader of her country in Burma, Myanmar. She said, to live compassionately is to courageously see the connection between ourselves and those who suffer. Not only do we see the connection and become aware of it, but we allow ourselves to feel it. And finally, it is not just to see and feel the connection, but to act on it, to courageously take responsibility for those who suffer. To see, to feel, and to act. This is the mission of both the faith communities and the cities. To see each other for who we are, to feel each other's spirits, to feel each other's pain and suffering, to feel each other's good offerings that we make, and then to act together on what we might do to make our world a better place. So I'm the closer today, and I want you civic leaders to use us, the faith leaders, because I'll stand up in any one of your city council meetings and talk about this. And so will all the people in your communities who are willing and able to come to the table and speak passion into the world of compassion. And I want you to consider seriously how this umbrella takes the issues that you want to address in your community and does what Mayor Fisher says. No one can argue with it. And then you change what's wrong and what can be better in your communities. Friends, God bless you. May the work we do together enliven the spirits of our world and our communities. May passion
be our guide and compassion our hearts. Amen and amen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it and plan to work with you. Okay?
Thank you.
Have a good day.